Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm putting together my September TBR, and as I've done for the last couple of months, I'm going to be rolling a D20 to select the books that I'll be reading. Before we dive into that though, I do have a quick housekeeping thing to talk about, which is that since I started my new job, I've been finding it a little more difficult to find enough time to read and edit as much as I would like. So for the next little bit, just because I'm still settling in and getting a routine down and I've not been doing a great job with my sleep schedule, I'm going to be reducing the number of videos I'm making per week to just like one per week. My intention is to have a wrap up and a TBR for each month, and then 2 to 3 other videos. So it'd be like one every Saturday and then maybe a random Tuesday video as well. So somewhere between 4 and 6 videos a month. And that's kind of my goal, and I think that that's going to be a lot more doable for me for the next little while, especially because in September I have a business trip I have to go on and a couple of other travel plans, so it's just going to be a little bit easier for me to manage. I'm going to see how things go once I get settled into that rhythm, and then later down the road, if I feel like I've got a routine kind of figured out, I may come back to doing Tuesdays and Saturdays, but for now I'm going to be reducing down to at least Saturdays with the occasional Tuesday video. So I think that's it. That's the only housekeeping thing I had. I just wanted to mention that in case you noticed that suddenly my frequency drops off. I know I've been missing a few uploads here and there, and that's just been a scheduling thing. So that's the plan going forward, and now we will actually talk about the books that I'm going to be reading in September. I have a couple of things that I would like to specifically get onto my TBR for September, and I also have a major project I'm going to be starting in September as well that won't be coming out until, I think, November, so I'm not going to talk about that specifically because I kind of want it to be a little bit of a surprise, but I'm going to try and include some books for these other goals of mine in my lists, and hopefully I'll be able to work some of those into my TBR so that I don't overwhelm myself with things that I need to read in a single month. So that project is going to be starting, I'm planning to start it on the fall equinox on the 22nd of September. So before that, I'm going to have a few weeks to do some reading, and as I said, I'm going to be going on a business trip, so I'm probably going to want to take some stuff to read on the plane and in the hotel, in the evenings. So I'm going to talk about specific things after we do the dice rolls, just because I'm hopeful that they might actually make it into the dice rolls for the month, and I won't need to add them separately, but we'll see how things work out, and we'll go ahead and go through my list that I have for the month. So here's my list. The Sunshine Court by Nora Sakovic, I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones, Tiny Threads by Lilian Rivera, The Secret History by Donna Tartt, A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness, The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz, Bunny by Mona Awad, A Restless Truth by Freya Marsk, The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton, Decagon House Murders by Yukito Ayatsuji, Whispers of the Deep by Emma Hamm, Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, Thrum by Meg Smitherman, A Shadow All of Light by Fred Chappell, The Red Palace by June Herr, The Twyford Code by Janice Hallett, The Lost Kings by Tyrell Johnson, The Chestnut Man by Soren Sveistrup, This Golden Flame by Emily Victoria, and The Fairy Queen Book 2 by Edmund Spencer. So let's go find out what out of that list the D20 is going to have me reading for September. Alright, we'll just dive in with roll 1, and as per the usual, apologies if the thump from this one is pretty loud. I just find that this one is really easy to see on camera in the way that some of my others aren't. So roll number 1 is book 11. Roll number 2 is book 11. I'm going to read it twice. No, we'll re-roll that one. Book number 2 is actually, that is Against the Wall, but we're going to call it 13. And book number 3 is 18. Okay, let's go see what that is on the list. Well, last month the D20 gave me 2 books that my best friend had requested that I read, and it looks like this is going to be the month of Kindle Unlimited, because those first 2 picks, 11 and 13, are books that I literally just downloaded from Kindle Unlimited, so we have a bit of a theme running again this month. This is funny to me because one of them, this first one, number 11, is Whispers of the Deep by Emma Hamm, and this is the book that my friends and I just selected as our next Cursed Book Club read. This, if you're new to my channel, is a club I have with my friends where basically they find stuff or I find stuff that sounds like it's going to be a little bit cursed, and I read it and tell them about it so that they don't have to witness it with their own two eyes. And we have a lot of fun doing this. It's not quite like a hate read because we've ended up having a lot of fun with most of the books we've read. They're often not great books, but they're usually entertaining. This was one that I just happened to find a video from the author on TikTok that I thought was funny, sent it to my friends. They were immediately like, oh, you need to read this book, so we added it to the list. I don't remember the particulars of the plot, but I know that this is a fantasy romance with a merman as the hero character, and I believe we're following a scientist who lives in an underwater city, and she ends up meeting this guy who is a merman from a civilization that they believed was like one of legend or had been like completely killed off, something along those lines, and he wants to destroy the domed city, but then he ends up encountering the scientist, and then a romance ensues, and I assume that maybe he decides that maybe he doesn't want to kill humanity. So that's about what I remember about it, but I think it'll be a fun time. Regardless of whether I think it ends up being a good book, I think it's going to be a fun book to read. The other Kindle Unlimited one, number 13, is Thrum by Meg Smitherman, and this one is a horror romance. This sounded interesting. It's about a woman who wakes up and finds that she's the only person left alive on a ship in deep space, and when she calls for help, somebody answers, and it's an entity called Damien who answers her call, and she ends up on his ship. And then there is an ominous humming that seems to be calling from her from within the ship. So I'm curious to see how that's going to go. I could see this being really interesting, and I could also see it being very silly. So this may end up being a second Cursed Book Club book, depending on how it goes. My friends may be getting treated to 2 cursed books this month, which I'm sure they wouldn't complain about. We always have a good time with it. So, you know, we'll just have to see how that book goes because I don't really know what to expect. And I'm not sure, this might be a debut author, and I can't remember. I think it's indie published, but I'm not 100% certain on that either. But yeah, gonna be picking up 2 kind of romance books in September. That's the same actually as last month too. The 2 books that it gave me last month that my friend had recommended were both fantasy romance. So seems to be a bit of a trend. The dice seems to have an opinion. It seems to have a favorite genre. So, interesting. The final roll was number 18, and that was The Chestnut Man by Soren Sveistrup. This one is a very different vibe to those first 2, because this one is a Scandinavian crime novel. It's set in Copenhagen, and it's following a detective looking into a serial killer who leaves, like, creepy little chestnut dolls on crime scenes. And it sounds like it's going to be really dark and really interesting. I've heard good things about Scandinavian crime novels, but also heard that they're, like, a very specific flavor of crime novel, because they do tend to be, like, very grim and I think kind of hopeless feeling. So I'm interested to see how I feel about this. I know there's also a show out of this one as well, but I'm curious to see how I feel about this because something I've been enjoying doing in the last few years has been trying crime novels from different countries, reading more like mysteries and thrillers in translation. So I'm excited to give this one a try. It'll also be, if I manage to get to it, the first book off of my priority TBR that I'll have read in 2024. I've been doing a terrible job with that list. Doing better with some of my other lists, but my priority TBR has been untouched for the entirety of the year. So I'm excited that this one got picked. I think it's going to be an interesting one, and I also feel like it's going to be a good book for kind of transitioning into fall time because this one is set in October, and I'm just excited. I think it's going to be fun. Well, fun as a book about a serial killer that is also like dark and grim and gory can be, if that makes sense. So those are the books that the dice is giving me, but I do have a couple of other things to add. One, I am going to be reading some books for this other project because none of them managed to get on this list. I'm not going to tell you what the project is only because I feel like once I say it out loud, I put too much pressure on myself and then I put it off and I'm not going to like manage to read the books for it. So that's going to be coming in November. It's going to be a little bit of a surprise just because I think if I don't tell you what the project is, I might actually finish the project. So I'm going to be reading a few things for that probably in the latter half of the month. My goal is to start that project on the fall equinox. I may have said this in the intro already, but like, I'll say it again here. I'm going to start this on the 22nd of September, so in the meantime, I'll be reading the 3 that we've just gotten from the D20. But the other book that I want to add to my TBR is Tiny Threads by Lilium Rivera. This is an arc that I want to read. It comes out at the end of September, and I'm really trying to get my ratio back up because there's a book coming out in October that I really want to request. So I'm hopeful that I can get to this one and maybe another arc, but I'm going to try and prioritize Tiny Threads so that I can have it out, have my review out before the release date at the end of September. I've not been doing great with that this year. So this one, from what I can remember, is a story about a young woman who gets like an apprenticeship to a fashion designer she really looks up to, and then once she gets started she realizes that things are not as wonderful as she thought they were in this industry, and things take like a sinister turn. I feel like there's a lot of books about that kind of out lately, more in like the makeup industry, but like I feel like this is a pretty common premise at the moment, because the other two that come to mind are Natural Beauty and Rouge by Mona Awad. I can't remember, is it Ling Ling Huang who wrote Natural Beauty? I think those are the other two that just like popped to mind for me with a similar kind of idea of somebody who gets into an industry that either they have some prior connection to or that they really wanted to get into, and then find out that there's like something very sinister going on. So I'm really interested to read this one. I think it's going to be fun. This one is pitched as for fans of Sylvia Moreno Garcia, so obviously I had to give it a shot, and I'm definitely going to try and get to that one before the release date, which I think is like the 23rd or something. I'll put the actual release date on the screen if I remember to do that. But yeah, looking forward to that one as well. So basically I have 4 set books that I'm going to be reading. It's going to be this one and some ebooks, but I feel like that's a pretty reasonable TBR, and the ebooks are going to be great since I'm going to be doing some traveling. I'll be able to take my Kindle with me instead of having to pack a bunch of like heavier books into my bag. So actually that worked out really nicely in my favor. So let me know down in the comments what you're going to be reading in September. What's the thing you're most excited to get to? And I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting, well, at least once a week, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.